That time is almost here, the annual in-state showdown for Iowa against the Cyclones of Iowa State. No one better to discuss that matchup than the head Hawkeye, Kirk Ferentz. Kirk, it seems like we talk at this time of the year just about every year heading into this game, so I've probably asked this question before, yet it remains appropriate. What does this game mean, not just for Hawkeye and Cyclone alums, but for everyone who lives within the state borders?
It's just a very intense rivalry between both schools, and it's true in all sports, but certainly this kind of kicks it off, I guess, for the entire year. And my education came back in 1981, actually. It was my first year here as an assistant, someone who was, basically raised in the city of Pittsburgh, and I was coaching at the University of Pittsburgh as a grad assistant in 1980. So I knew nothing about the Midwest, knew nothing about the state of Iowa for that matter. But when I came here and got educated really quickly that September, it was our second game of the season. We traveled up to Ames, and it was just an intensity that I'd never really witnessed or experienced outside of maybe Penn State back in those days. So, it's really on par with that rivalry, I'd say. And the unique thing about it is you have two different conferences represented, and all of that in a state of less than 3 million people. So it's really kind of interesting. But yeah, it's extremely intense and extremely a lot of people are really interested in the whole thing.
Also uninterrupted since 1977, we see other rivalries. You mentioned Penn State-Pitt, an interruption. Michigan-Notre Dame, there was an interruption. From your perspective, in most years, and maybe it's not necessarily the case this year, but most years, you are significantly higher ranked, significantly higher regarded than Iowa State, so the argument can be made that there is much more to lose than to gain. Has there ever been consideration of replacing this with a less dangerous non-conference opponent?
Yeah, I think it was interrupted. They had some issues whenever, going back years ago, and then they got it going in the late 70s. And, from my vantage point, it's a game that's really good for our entire state. I think everybody involved is interested and talking about it this week. So I think just from that standpoint, it's a healthy thing.
And I know you have 20 games against the Cyclones as the head coach under your belt. Do you have a favorite game, or is there a moment that stands out when you think about this series?
There's just been nothing easy about it. And credit goes to Iowa State back in '98. They came into Kinnick the year before I got here. I think Iowa was favored by 25, 27 points, something like that, and dropped the punt in this north end zone here. And next thing you know, it was a rout the other direction. So ever since that time, it's been a really heated rivalry. It's been just some great competition, a lot of outstanding players from both teams involved in it. So I think the one thing about it, there's with few exceptions, it usually goes down to the last possession or next to last possession, and it's usually really good football, and it's just been exciting to be part of the whole thing.
Kirk, you've played 2 games already this year, including a conference game, so Iowa State has plenty of game film from this year to look at. Cyclones only played 1 game. They were off last week. In week 1, they played an FCS opponent. How much more difficult does that make the scout for you and your staff?
To your point, it's unusual to have a bye your second week, but they did. So we've got one snapshot. But the good news is that, Coach Campbell and his staff are established. I'm sure they'll have some wrinkles for us, but, for the most part, I think we know who they are, what their identity is, and they probably feel the same about us, and we have had a snapshot of their players. But they're such a veteran team that, so many of their guys played last year, and I think the other interesting aspect in this game is we played them, last September, and Brock Purdy, their quarterback, who's done such a great job, he's 8-2 now as a starter, was not playing in that game. So that's a big difference.
Offensively, over the last couple of years, we've seen Nate Stanley have moments of excellence and moments of inconsistency. It's been really consistent, Kirk, through 2 weeks. 64% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, and I'm guessing you would say most importantly, no interceptions. What's the biggest step that you've seen Nate make from last year to this year?
Yeah, I think it's like any player. You just hope that when a player is experienced, that they're using it to their advantage. And nobody works harder than Nate. So he does a great job at that, and he's extremely, just a very mentally tough guy. So that's not an issue. And I think the biggest thing right now, he just looks more comfortable, more in control out there. I would attribute that to the experience level that he's been able to put together, and then also I think he's enjoying things a little bit more, and that's something we all tried to encourage him to do a little bit. When you're a senior, one of the benefits is that you've been through it, and you know the ups and downs a little bit, and just just enjoy the experience a little bit more.
Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz and the Hawkeyes on the road to take on Iowa State. 4 o'clock Eastern coming up this weekend on FS1. Kirk, always great to catch up. Wish you the best of luck this weekend, and we'll see you at some point down the road later this season.
Thanks, Rick. Good to talk with you.